Broken James Quest, and last night I got to see Blumhouse's new film Drop, which, by the way, I think has probably the most annoying trailer that I've seen in a little while now, only because the trailer for this movie kept on using the phone vibrating noise, you know, just the buzz, like over and over again. Anyways, if you've seen the trailer, imagine seeing that in front of every movie for the last 2 months. It's extraordinarily annoying. Anyways, so this movie, of course, you know, lady goes on a date. She starts getting these airdrops on her phone, and she is being threatened by strangers in her house that she can see on her cameras at her home, to do this and do that, and ultimately kill her date. That's what the trailer sets up. And yeah, that's pretty much what we get here. 90% of this movie takes place within this restaurant date that she is at. And it really is just a big whodunit. You know, you're looking around the restaurant, you're trying to figure out, like, okay, who did she bump into the second she got into this restaurant? And they give you, you know, a slew of suspects that you can look at, right? And I will say that ultimately who it does end up being, which I'll talk about in spoilers, who it does end up being, I did not expect it to be that person. So, you know, on the face, I gotta give the movie credit for that. Like, okay, you did a good job. I did not guess who it was, right? Like, and that's like probably the biggest thing for a whodunit, right? Like, it has to make sense, but it also starts to surprise you, which is not always easy, because a lot of the times if they try to make it make sense, it's very obvious who it is. So I will give them credit for that. I did not see where it was going. My other thing is that this movie is only an hour and 35 minutes, give or take, right? And I think that was like the perfect length for this movie, because when you're at the restaurant for the large majority of this movie, it's building suspense constantly, and she's constantly trying to outsmart the person who's giving her these airdrops, because they have control of the cameras and seemingly be able to do anything they want to do in this restaurant somehow, which, you know, once you figure it out, you're kind of questioning some of the logistics of, like, well, how did they do this thing? That doesn't, you know, and you do have to suspend your belief a little bit, because you're like, I don't understand how they possibly could have done this other thing over here, but sure, okay. But, you know, it builds suspense really nicely. You are, like, guessing who it is. Is her date involved? Is it the waiter? Is it the bartender? Is it this guy? Is it that guy? Is it this person? You know, and it builds that pretty much the entire movie. She's constantly trying to outsmart them, and she constantly gets foiled. She comes up with a new plan, and yet somehow they knew exactly what she was going to do. They knew exactly what's happening. No matter how sneaky she tries to be, they seem to know everything that's going on. Now, again, you got to suspend your belief and or suspend your disbelief. And after a while, you do start to, you know, get tired. Like, after about an hour being in this restaurant, you're like, okay, you got to start answering some questions, because you're kind of playing the same shtick over and over again of her coming up with some really clever idea, and then somehow, like, surprise, I had a microphone there, I had a camera there, I can, you know, I'm within range to send you drops, and I cloned your phone so I can see everything happening on your phone, and, you know, just like constantly, right? And half the time I am like, okay, this just seems very unlikely, but all right. But ultimately, you know, there is, you know, I enjoy the main character here, her struggle that's going on, which I'll talk about in a second. And what the ultimate plot ends up being, I was satisfied with. You know, I felt like it surprised me. It was a nice little thriller. It's nothing special, I don't think, but it is like, okay, I had a decent time watching this one. So if you're kind of just want to see a whodunit, nice little thriller for, you know, for an evening, like, it's a decent time. It's not great, but it's good enough. I enjoyed it. You know, I had a fun time watching this one. Now, I will say, there are certain themes and certain things being tackled here that, you know, depending on your own personal history, might make you a little uncomfortable. There is a domestic violence, you know, kind of little story here happening, because they go over how in this character's past. She had a lot of domestic violence happening, and that's like been her struggle ever since. And you know, it's kind of like her running arc as her character. She grows throughout this evening. So if the depictions of that kind of stuff would make you uncomfortable, or you know, anything else, just maybe a warning that like, hey, that is in this movie. You know, it kind of happens right away. Like the trailers gave no indication of this, obviously, and like as I'm watching the movie, it starts immediately with this kind of stuff, and you're like, oh shit, okay, this got very serious. You know, really dark and really serious. So anyways, just want to put that warning out there that like, you know, if you've had something like that, or if you know someone who've had something like that happen to you, maybe just a little warning that that is gonna be in this movie. Okay. For the most part, this movie is pretty lighthearted. It's got a lot of jokey, funny characters, but it does get serious at times because it is a thriller, right? And just know that that's, you know, that kind of stuff is part of it. So just so you're aware. All right, now I want to get into some spoilers here, because I feel like this is where I got to talk about like how likely any of this is to happen. But obviously, spoiler alert, because this is a whodunit. I'm going to talk about whodunit. So spoilers, go ahead and shut the video off now if you haven't seen it yet. I recommend you go watch it, or go watch it on streaming or whatever. It was a fine enough time. I enjoy whodunits, right? So like it was decent. All right, spoiler alert, here we go. I'm gonna talk about it. Okay, so ultimately who it ends up done it. There is basically what happens is that her date is a photographer for the mayor of Chicago. And on his SD card, which she was instructed early on in the movie to destroy under threat, she was instructed to destroy the SD card from his camera. She ends up finding that, oh, he's taking pictures of a bunch of money, wire transfers, and vaguely illegal stuff that they never really get too into. I don't think they don't, you know, they kind of just gloss over it. Like, vaguely illegal stuff was happening, serious enough so much that apparently the mayor of Chicago has set up this whole elaborate evening to where he has this guy, and you meet him early on. As soon as she walks in, she walks to the bar, this guy sits next to her, and he's like on a blind date, and he talks to her for a second, and he seems like an older, kind of nerdy, lonely guy, and you know, you kind of feel bad for him because his date seems kind of mean, right? It turns out he is the one who has been airdropping her threats all evening, and he's working for the mayor. And they also have another guy that's broken into her house and is on her home camera, like threatening her sister and her son. And the whole thing is that the mayor of Chicago is trying to erase the photos that this photographer took, and to get him killed. That way he cannot testify as a witness to anything, because he was about to go to the FBI and deliver this SD card, which she does destroy, so it's gone. And really, it's this highly unlikely series of events to where this lady and this photographer were talking on a dating app for months, and somehow the mayor knew about this, or at least the mayor's goons knew about this. And so they've cloned her phone, they've gotten access to her house, they've gotten access to the cameras inside this restaurant, and they just seem to have everything perfectly laid out in order to force this lady to go kill this guy, right? Which, I gotta say, it feels like there were probably a million easier ways to get this done, you know? Like, this seems so elaborate and so overthought, to where there's bugs, you know, like microphones or cameras or whatever. There's bugs on the table, there's bugs in the bathroom, there's bugs like at the bar, there's like, they've planted bugs all over this restaurant. I don't know, it feels like you could have just hired any random goon to go like do a drive-by at this guy or something. I don't know, it's crazy the lengths they went to. But you know, it's a movie, it's a thriller, that's what you're here for, right? So this guy ends up being the main villain, right? And I did not expect this guy, because they introduce him early on, as you do, right? And right away you kind of write him off, because there's a million other red herrings that seem even more creepy, right? And as an audience member, I'm like, okay, well, those are obviously red herrings. maybe it's actually this person, or maybe it's actually the date. There's a waiter who's really goofy and jokey, and you're like, maybe it's actually him. Wouldn't that be crazy? Like, he's just putting on this really jokester weirdo act, right? But no, it turns out to be the older lonely guy. And the reason his date left him was because he was staring over at her the whole time, because, oh, okay, he was the one who was texting her. It makes sense now. Now, this all seems really elaborate. You know, it ends, of course, with, you know, she manages to trick him into drinking poison. He pulls a gun. Like, everyone in the restaurant is panicking, and shots are being fired, and he ends up getting pushed out the window. Oh, by the way, they're in a restaurant that's like, you know, 20 stories up in the sky, right? Like, it's, I don't know if restaurants like this exist. I guess I assume they have to, but this is a giant restaurant way up in the sky. I guess if it's just really fancy and you want that skyline, so okay, sure, I guess they exist. But he gets pushed out that window, and he's of course dead. And now she has to rush home to try and stop the guy who's attacking her kid and her sister at home. So of course it ends like in a cool action scene and a big fight, and she, you know, because of her past, when she wasn't able to, her domestic situation, she wasn't able to pull the trigger. Now she gets the strength to pull the trigger and stop this guy, and you know, you're like, okay, it's come full circle. She was actually able to save herself this time. So okay, good job. Character progress, right? Character growth. And that's pretty much where it ends, you know. And this is another one of those movies where, like, the this is so messy in the sense of, like, so much stuff happened that would be very difficult to prove or explain, you know. Like, a piano player gets murdered at one point, a bunch of people, like, probably got shot at some point. Like, there's so much complexity to this that I don't understand how anyone would believe her, especially when they talk about how, like, oh yeah, all these airdrops get erased immediately, like none of this is on your phone still, and you know, etc., etc. So I'm like, I don't know how much of this is provable, but the ending just kind of fast forwards to the mayor was arrested because of this crazy plan that he had, and the photographer and the lady saved the day. And I'm like, they did, I guess, but I don't know how they got away with any of this. But all right, you know, this is one of those things where you got to just accept it, right? Again, you're suspending your disbelief. Like, how could they possibly have proven or any of this? But okay. And yeah, and that's Drop. You know, I do think it's definitely a movie where you gotta just go with what they're giving you, except that, you know, if you think too hard about any of the logistics, it's like this. I don't see how they possibly could have put this together. But it makes for a good thriller. It's a good time at the movies, you know, like, if you just have fun with it, it's a fun time. So, I don't know, I recommend it. I think it was pretty good. Anyways, let me know what you guys think about Drop. I'll see you guys later. Bye.